Hi folks, HR Funk here with a midweek update on a topic that I first discussed almost exactly 1 year ago, and that is my transition on my duty pistol from iron sights, which I had used for almost 50 years, to a micro-red-dot optic sight, in this case that being the Leupold Deltapoint Pro. Now, if you saw that series of videos that I made last year, you may recall that I decided to make the transition to a micro-red-dot on my duty pistol because at my current age, my eyes have changed to the point where the front sight was starting to get blurry when I was trying to shoot using just the iron sights. So after many months worth of research and consideration, I finally opted for the Leupold Deltapoint Pro with the 7.5 MOA Delta reticle, and to host that I went with the Smith & Wesson Performance Center M&P 40L. Now, I did not have much concern with regard to the pistol because after carrying Smith & Wesson M&Ps of one type or another for over a decade, I was pretty certain the 40L was going to be a fine pistol, and it has been in every respect. My greater concern was the sight itself and how I was going to adapt to using a micro-red-dot. And I'm happy to tell you at this point I couldn't be more pleased with the Leupold Deltapoint Pro or my decision to transition to a micro-red-dot. Something to be aware of if you decide to make this transition yourself is when you first make the change from iron sights to a micro-red-dot optic, you're probably going to actually be a little slower getting shots on target. Reason being, and I'm speaking from my own experience and for myself, after years and years worth of developing muscle memory to bring iron sights to bear on target, getting used to the micro-red-dot is different. When you're using iron sights and you're coming up on target, you usually start to pick up the front sight in your lower peripheral vision right about here, and then you simply guide that onto the target and you're ready to press the trigger. With the micro-red-dot, it's different. When I get to here, because of the housing and the way the reticle is projected on the lens, I still can't see anything. It's not until I'm pretty much on target that I'm able to see that reticle. And when you start doing it and you haven't developed the muscle memory to come up and know exactly how the pistol has to be oriented in your hand and with the proper grip, you normally can't see it. And then you spend a little bit of time looking around till you finally find that reticle, then you're ready to fire your shots. And the way you get better with that is to just practice drawing, coming up, and finding that sight. And for the first several months that I was carrying this pistol with the Deltapoint Pro attached, every day when I got ready for work, I was practicing multiple draws, coming up and finding that red dot sight and getting more and more used to having everything aligned properly when I came on target to be able to press the trigger. But again, that's something that took time. At this juncture, I still don't feel like I'm quite as comfortable or that it's quite as natural to come up and bring the Deltapoint Pro on target as it was with iron sights. But then again, I used firearms with iron sights for 40 years, and I've been using this one with the Deltapoint Pro for 1 year. So I'll cut myself a little bit of slack there. Now, that being said, it's not very much different, and I really don't think I'm much slower with the Deltapoint Pro than I was with the iron sights at this juncture. But again, that did take some time. Another thing that concerned me somewhat, specifically with the Deltapoint Pro, was the battery life for this optic. And when I was doing my research, there were two competitors for my choice as a micro-red-dot optic to use on my duty pistol. One was the Trijicon RMR, and the other one was the Leupold Deltapoint Pro. And one of the things that I noticed in that research was a lot of people making references to the battery life with the Trijicon RMR and how it was so much greater than the Leupold Deltapoint Pro. It even led me to call Leupold and ask them specifically about the battery life. So when I started to use the Deltapoint Pro, very shortly after I attached it to my pistol, I started carrying a spare battery in the pocket of my uniform shirt. And I was waiting for the day that I would start to see that reticle flash, and that would tell me that it was time to change the battery. I put that battery in, and I put the sight into service last February. That battery didn't die until just a couple of weeks ago. I finally, after almost a year of carrying that battery in my pocket, got to replace the battery in the Deltapoint Pro. And I'm extremely pleased with that. Now, one of the features of the Deltapoint Pro is it does have an auto shutoff. And when the pistol, or I should say the sight, doesn't sense movement for 5 minutes or more, it powers down. And then as soon as it senses movement, it's instantly back on. So that does help to preserve the battery. And I've noticed before that I'll be sitting at my desk, or if I've been sitting in the cruiser stationary for a while, I'll slowly look over and see if it's gone off, and there are times that it has. So it does rest sometimes even when I'm at work. But again, as soon as I stand up or as soon as I move, it comes back on instantly. And I've never had a situation where I brought it out of the holster or tried to come up on target and had it not light up before I actually have it on target and I'm ready to fire. So there's no delay there that you have to worry about or anything with regard to that. Auto off. As soon as it senses any kind of movement, it's instantly back on. Now, when it came to considering a micro red dot in general, and not just the Leupold Deltapoint Pro, another concern that I had was the lens and having foreign material or rain or snow or whatever build up on that lens, because as you can see, when it's in the holster, it's basically a shelf for anything that might drift onto it to settle on. And something that I've gotten used to doing, particularly if I'm out in the rain or out in the snow or any kind of conditions where I'm concerned about that, is just resting my arm over top of the sight. And so I can be talking to people, or I can be walking around or doing whatever, and I've just got my arm resting there, and if it's a rainy day or if it's snowing out and I've got a raincoat or my winter coat or whatever, that gives it that much more protection. So I do take that little bit of a precaution when I'm outside with the Deltapoint Pro. Now, another thing that has happened, and one of the features that I talked about in those videos last year with the Deltapoint Pro, is this guard, which is a metal guard over top of the sight. And that is very valuable, because there have been various times during this past year where I've turned or gotten out of a car or done whatever, and something bangs against that sight. Anyone that's ever carried a duty pistol in a holster like this knows the pistol itself gets banged pretty frequently, and when you've got a sight that protrudes as far as this one does, that's going to get banged from time to time too. And if you look very closely, you might even be able to see some of the nicks in the finish on the guard. But again, nothing has ever touched the lens. Now, I do have to take a lens cloth periodically and just clean the dust out of there, because that's the one thing that does occur. And in fact, looking at it now, that stands to be, or it really needs to be cleaned off now. Even so, there's no problem seeing through there and picking up the reticle on the sight. Another decision that I'm very happy with is the Delta reticle itself. And as I said a little while ago, it's a 7.5 MOA Delta-shaped reticle. And I'm glad I went with that. It's big, it's easy to find, and you may recall, if you saw those videos last year, I zeroed the sight so the very tip of that Delta-shaped reticle is where the bullet strikes. So if I need to make a very precise shot, I can put the very tip of the Delta where I want the bullet to go and squeeze the trigger and be reasonably confident that that's where the bullet is going to go. So I like that nice big Delta-shaped reticle. A lot of people like the smaller ones, and if I was doing target shooting or something like that where I wanted to make the most precise shot possible, I would probably like that smaller reticle too. But for defensive shooting, where I want to pick up that reticle quickly and get shots on target, I really like that bigger Delta-shaped reticle. The only real downsides that I've discovered with the micro-red-dot optics is there is still not a very large holster selection out there to accommodate the MRDS equipped pistols. So you do have to do a little bit of looking. I'm still using this Blackhawk Omnivore, and it works okay, but I'd really rather have something else that's a little bit more in keeping with a duty style holster. Again, this works okay, but I'm still waiting for some more holster makers to come on board and develop some more holsters, duty type holsters, for accommodating a pistol with a micro red dot optic. And the one other negative specific to the Deltapoint Pro in particular is the fact that the rear of the sight is so high that even with the suppressor height sights on my M&P 40L, you still cannot co-witness the sights with your micro red dot. Now, Leupold does offer an auxiliary sight that attaches to the rear of the Deltapoint Pro, but I've never taken the time to get one of those. Someday maybe I will, but for now, I've never had the red dot fail me. Again, I keep an eye on that to make sure I don't start to see the reticle flashing, telling me that I need to change the battery, and it's just been a good, reliable sight. So I may get the auxiliary sight at some point, but I've just not done so yet. And that's my midweek update on my transition to a micro red dot optic sight on my duty pistol, which I carry with me every day at work. If you have any questions or comments on this video, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you order anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 5% off anything you order from Optics Planet. See you next time, folks. And until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.